Hello everyone, welcome back to the Cichlid Shack, thecichlidShack.com. This will be part 2 of my video series, So You Think You Want a Fish Room. This part will be labeled budgeting, a very important part in a fish room build or planning, or however you want to call it for your fish room. Again, I'm going to be looking at notes here. I want to try and make sure that I get everything for you guys. As far as budgeting, we talked about the planning stage in the first part of the video and how important it was for certain things to be taken care of and needs to be met. Insulation, for example, need to budget for insulation. I'm going to compare each of these things to my fish room. I am going to give you actual costs that I have invested into these items, so I'm not going to give you everything that I've spent, but I'm going to give you a rough estimate and actual cost into some of these items. Starting with installation, I used 10 sheets of the 4x8 sheets of insulating panels. They range around $10 a piece, so do the math, 10 times 10, right around $100 for the insulation for the garage door and the one exterior wall. Blown in installation, you're going to see this several times in the budgeting phase. I am lucky enough that my father is a general contractor, so he has vast resources to a lot of these items and things that you may not have the accessibility to, so you need to consider that into your budget. Are you handy enough to build the racks? Do you know people like, say I do, my dad, general contractor, who knows, who has subs that do stuff like blown in insulation. I was able to get my attic blown in for 75 bucks, basically the cost of the insulation. So take that into consideration when you're planning the budgeting stage of your fish room. Second part that we talked about was water and drainage. Will you have to run water lines into your fish room? Will you have to run drainage? Think of these things. As far as my fish room, it was the cost of the mop sink, the plumbing to do so, and we put it right next to my hot water heater that was in my garage already and tapped right into it, so we have cold and hot water there, and then we hooked up the drain. So the cost of the materials is all it cost me, because again, my dad's a general contractor. So right around 150 bucks to do that. Heating and cooling. Like I said, I decided to heat and cool the room rather than put individual heaters in each tank. Again, dad's a general contractor, so I got a steal of a deal on one of those units where it's a 2-ton unit. The unit itself is in the backyard, and up toward the ceiling above my garage is the actual unit for the inside, and it regulates the heat and cold and blows, does it from there. It also has a dehumidifying part on it. I don't know if you've ever seen the commercial with the Mitsubishi one on television where the unit's in the backyard and it hangs on the wall inside the house, and that's kind of similar to what I have, and we'll show you that when we get out into the fish room in future videos into this series. Altogether, that cost me $1,500 installed. Steal of a deal. The thing should have been somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000. Again, dad's a general contractor, got a steal of a deal. Think of humidity control, work that into your budget. As we discussed in the planning stage, mine comes with that unit, so I took care of that in installing that unit. Also, you must think of the need for power in your fish room. Installing the heating and cooling unit, I had to run a separate breaker for that because it takes its own. So that, luckily, it was right on the outside of the garage where the unit is, so it wasn't much to do so. But think about the power that you're going to need for your fish room depending on how you choose to filter and heat. If you do individual heaters, depending on how many tanks you have, You have to think that these things range from 100 to 300 watts a piece, maybe more. So that sucks up a lot of power. You need to have the proper power outlets and power where you need it. So take that into your budgeting considerations. Mine was a garage. It was wired for power. It has outlets all the way around the garage. I don't actually use very many outlets except for some of the lighting, and a few hang on the back filters. But other than that, I have absolutely nothing plugged in. Next in the budgeting stage is the racks. You have to take into consideration budgeting your lumber, your screws. Again, if you're not handy, the cost for someone to help you build it, a contractor, labor and tools. If you aren't handy, you probably don't have the tools. So again, hiring a contractor who has the tools to do it. My dad, general contractor, he had everything ready. He is the genius behind my racks out there. I have to give all the credit to him. I mean, I helped him build them, but the man is a genius, and we will go over that when I go into the rack building part on my series. Now, I wish I would have filmed it when we built it, but we'll go into depth and I'll give you close-up views as to what he did in that part of the series. All in told, I probably have $1,000 to $1,200 just in lumber and screws and such into that part of the build. I have a lot of lumber in there. So make sure you budget enough for lumber and screws and labor to build your racks. Next, budget for whatever type of filtration you chose to use. In my case, it was a linear piston pump. So again, I told you where I would tell you where I got all of these things. It's a place called Jehmco, JEHMCO.com. I got everything. They have just about everything you could ever need as far as fish supplies, in both individual and in bulk. I got my linear piston pump, the valves, the air tubing, the sponge filters, the tap that you need to tap into the pipe, because you have to drill holes and then you have to tap. What a tap does is it puts threads on it so that you can screw the valves in. And then also at Lowe's, I bought the PVC pipe and Teflon tape and the glue to glue the pipes together and clamps. All in told, this cost me right around the range of $1,500 to $1,600 total. Again, I have the video series on my filter system install, so go check that out on my channel. Next, in the budgeting stage, you need to budget for your fish tanks. I have a breakdown of what I have here in front of me. Right now, I'm sitting at 125 tanks. I broke it down for you guys. I have 15 29s, 15 55s, 12 40-gallon breeders, 35 20 gallons. Now they range from tall to long in that, and 48 10-gallon tanks. That's a total of 125 tanks right now. All in told, it's about $3,000 worth of fish tanks just in the tanks alone. So budget for how many tanks you're going to need. In your planning stage, you already figured that out, and how you laid it out, and how many is going to fit on your racks, and how you're going to build it and lay it out. So you should know how many tanks you need before you even start this process. Next, are you going to go bare bottom? Are you going to use gravel in the tanks? Are you going to have any decorations? You need to budget for this. I started with gravel in all of my tanks. I still have gravel in the breeder tanks, and I also have a 6 or 8 inch clay pot and a piece of flagstone for them to do their cichlid dance or cichlid breeding in. So consider that with your budgeting, how you're going to decorate, or if you're going to put gravel. Now I've gone bare bottom in my 10s, and I'm working on all of my 20s being bare bottom, mainly because the tanks are cycled now, and I use the gravel out of the 20s to help quickly cycle my new 55 grow outs. Bare bottoms, when it comes to fry growing out are much easier to maintain once they're cycled, in my opinion. Much easier to do water changes, so that's why I've chosen to go bare bottom on my 10s and my 20s. Next thing you need to budget for is, once the fish room is up and you have the tanks, the chemicals and the supplies that you're going to need. Water conditioners, medications for illness and such like that, aquarium salt, your general cure, some of the other medications you might need, Python for doing water changes, hoses for filling, sponges, buckets, nets. You need to budget for all the supplies you're going to need. Think of how much supplies it takes for your one tank and then multiply that by 125 and think of the supplies that you're going to need. Something that I missed in my budgeting stage, which I don't want you guys to forget, is your lids and your lighting. Make sure that you budget for how you're going to cover your tanks, how you're going to light all your tanks or light the room. Very important part in the budgeting. It is a good chunk of change, especially when you have as many tanks as I do. So make sure that you budget for that before starting your fish room. Lastly, after that, you need to figure out your budget for your fish. In the planning stage, you decided whether you were going to, just for fun, just for a showroom, is it going to be a breeding setup, a business? Now that you decided that, the last part of the budgeting is your fish and what is it going to cost you. In my case, it was going to be a business in the long run. So mine were going to be breeding colonies that I was purchasing and putting in these tanks. My breeding colonies range anywhere from $200 to $300 a piece per colony is probably what I have invested, somewhere between $200 and $300 into each colony. Now I'm breeding 12, 15, somewhere in the range between 15 and 20 different types of cichlids right now. So you can do the math on that and imagine what I have invested just in the fish alone. So my last bit of advice in the budgeting stage is, whatever you budget for your fish room, double it, because it's gonna take more than what you originally budget. And my best piece of advice is, this is gonna cost you way more than you originally think. So when you come to your final number, double your budget, and that will probably be a safe amount for you to build and have your fish room. The last thing that I want to say is about a budgeting stage is to make sure you budget for sustaining and maintaining your fish room. There's a monthly cost to having and running and upkeeping a fish room. The cost of fish food, the cost of electricity. My electric bill ranges me around $276 a month year round, so I had to budget that into my monthly budget of bills. Chemicals and everything that you're going to need to just maintain a fish room every month. Consider that in your budgeting. All right, folks, that concludes this portion of phase 2 of this series in budgeting. We'll see you next time for part 3 of the series. Thanks for watching. Please rate, comment, subscribe, and leave any questions down below. And I appreciate you watching. Have a great day.